G'day virtual pilots, it's Requiem. In this video we're going to have a look at the Gotha from Flying Circus Volume 2. Now there's an extra 2 crew members we can utilise here. So if you press Control C, that takes us to the first one, which is in the nose gunner. And we can see looking back at the other 2 guys. You press T to pick up the gun, mouse moves around and left mouse button will shoot it off. Pressing Shift T will look over the iron sight. So we drop the gun, pressing T, and then we'll go back to the next crew member with Control C. This is the rear gunner, same deal. Just we have a little cockpit light here, which is activated using L, but other than that it's the same kind of position. Control C to take us back to the pilot, and now we can have a look around the cockpit itself. So down the bottom there we have the throttles, then the clock in front, and coming up to the top we have the radiator shutter control. Forward is open, back is closed. On the main panel got the magnetic compass, airspeed indicator in kilometers per hour, an altimeter in meters, manometers which indicate manifold pressure, a couple of valves, magneto switches, a bank indicator, air pressure source selectors, a magneto selector, a dual reading tachometer, a thermometer, and fuel control valves, which are 3 of them. Up on the top right we have a hand fuel transfer pump and a cockpit light. And down the bottom here we have the hand air pump for the fuel system. So it covers what we're looking at in front of us. Looking behind us we have a fuel gauge which is up there on the tank. So for this engine start, you can start both engines individually if you want, but by default they're both selected, so just press E and it's just going to get both engines going at the same time, which you can do to save time. So now you can have a look at the pilot's notes for the Gotha G.V. Alright, so now the engines are started. We'll look at taxiing the Gotha as it's a little bit different than what you're used to. So you're going to open the radiator shutters and then you'll increase the throttle to above 1000 RPM. That'll help you get rolling initially. So we'll do that now. So increasing the power, open the shutters. Now once we start moving, I'll pull the throttle back a little bit, but what I'm going to show you is how to turn on the ground. And there's different ways to do it. So first off, I'm not going to use the rudder pedal, so I'm actually going to use the wheel. So if I want to go to the right, I'm going to have to turn the wheel to the left and vice versa. So you have to use opposite ailerons to the direction you're going to go. And the combined effects from these ailerons will lead you to turn in the direction that you want. So essentially, if you're on the ground and you want to turn left, move your stick to the right. If you want to go right, move your stick to the left. And there's also the differential aspect of the engines in play as well. So if I want to have a tighter turn to the left here, I'll just reduce the power on the left engine. And the differential with the excess thrust on the right side will push the airplane around to the left. Now this aircraft is loaded up with 350 kilograms of bombs and full fuel, so it's pretty much at its max takeoff weight. So I'm trying to maximize my takeoff roll here by going as far along the airfield as I can before turning it around. Now if you did load up to 700 kilos worth of bombs, you are going to have to reduce your fuel loadout to about 400 litres. And this is in order to keep you below that maximum takeoff weight, which is in the pilot notes if you want to see the numbers behind that. Now I can't quite bring it around to the left here, so I've got to go straight a little bit more. At any rate, taxiing around the ground is pretty good practice in this thing. This will give you an appreciation for what you're going to have to do once you get airborne, and that's something we've got to look at after we actually do the takeoff. Otherwise this airplane is very easy to lose control of. if you do try and use the ailerons a little bit too vigorously. Alright, so get that differential power, bringing ourselves around to the left. Gonna try and get a straight line past those hangars in the distance. Alright, so now we're established on a decent heading for our takeoff roll. Going to start increasing the power. Get it to 1000 RPM. Increase the power to full. Where's that back pressure so we can start accelerating. Push the yoke forward, get that tail skid off the ground. That way we can accelerate faster. The goal is going to be to rotate at 100 kilometers per hour, so we're watching that airspeed indicator. There's 100, so we start pitching it back, get airborne, and just adjust your pitch accordingly to continue climbing at about 100 to 110 kilometers per hour. Now what you want to avoid on the takeoff is applying any kind of aileron input. Remember that these ailerons generate a lot of adverse yaw, so if you start applying big aileron inputs on your takeoff, you're more than likely going to spin and cause the aircraft to crash into the ground. So keep your aileron inputs to an absolute minimum and you'll be just fine. Now obviously the Gotha, when it's fully loaded with fuel and bombs, it doesn't climb very well. So we're going to go up higher in the air and we're going to look at exactly how to initiate turns in the Gotha, as this is something that's probably going to cause you problems if you're not paying attention. Now we're up higher in the Gotha now, there are no bombs in this one, so we're just going to look at how to do a few turns and recovery if you end up getting yourself in a bad position by misuse of these ailerons. Now let's say I want to make a turn to the left, so now you look left, and you want to use a bit of aileron to enter the turn and get the airplane banked. The airplane will yaw to the right pretty strongly, so you got to fix that with a bit more aileron. And then suddenly you find yourself in a problem where you can't really figure out how the airplane's going to recover. So it's easy to just let the control center reduce the power and get back to straight and level flight. So because these ailerons generate so much adverse yaw, which means that the nose is being pushed away from the direction that you're trying to roll, you'll need to use either rudder at the same time, or if you want it, you can even just enter the turn using rudder alone. This is a big heavy plane, so there's no need to rush into a turn. So until you're comfortable using the ailerons, you just use the technique of pushing the rudder down the way you want to go. The airplane's going to roll, and you can just add back pressure to maintain altitude in your turn. This will keep it nice and stable. And you get a nice smooth turn, and then when you're ready to roll out of the turn, you're going to use right rudder, bring the nose back around to the right, and then center the rudders and adjust the pitch to maintain your altitude. That's the easiest way to do it. If you're comfortable down the road, you can incorporate some aileron into that to increase the speed at which you enter the turn as well. But that's going to require rudder input at the same time to prevent the nose being pushed over to the right due to that adverse yaw. And now we want to roll out of the turn, get some right aileron and right rudder at the same time. So it'll prevent that craziness that we saw before. Then we just level off. Now to show you something that's probably going to happen to you, we're going to induce kind of an uncontrolled situation here resulting in a spin. This might happen if you're panicking, trying to avoid an enemy airplane attacking you. End up spinning it, so at that point just neutralize the controls and reduce the power. You can use rudder as needed to get out of the spin and then just recover like you normally would. So it's important in this airplane, because of that adverse yaw, to just neutralize the controls, and that way you recover from the spin quickly. Now whether this airframe would be able to handle something like that in real life, I'm not really sure. So now we're established on the left downwind for the airfield we took off from, and we're going to look at landing the airplane. And just like everything else, nothing happens quickly in this airplane, so I've already got the radiator shutters closed. That way we can try and keep the engines cooler at the lower power setting. And we're just maintaining about 1,000 feet, which is going to be equal to, about 330 meters on the altimeter. running about 1200 RPM on each engine. This will get you to be about 100 kilometers per hour on the downwind, which is a good speed. And the main problem you're going to encounter here is trying to figure out when to make that turn to final. You could switch to the gunner position if you like. Otherwise, you're looking out to the left. Once you can't see the airfield anymore, you kind of have to guess as to when you're at that 45 position. So kind of when it comes out maybe the back of the engine or something, that'll work. You're just going to guess where it's going to be if the gunner's not going to tell you, or if you're looking there. So ease into that turn with the rudder. That way you can avoid any issues with the aileron, creating the bad situation we looked at before. And once you have sight of the runway, then pick your aiming point. Mine's going to be just about where the dirt begins. And you can start reducing the power. That's where you'll begin losing the altitude. And then you can just adjust your base to final turn. So you fly the right amount of distance to keep descending towards that aiming point. So just like any other airplane, we're just adjusting our pitch and power. So we keep flying towards the aiming point, maintaining between 100 to 110 kilometers per hour. Now the other issue you're going to have is that as you come out on final, your right nose gunner is going to be in the way. So you can't really lean much to the left. So even if you tried, you would only go a little bit. You could lean to the right if you wanted, but even so you're not going to see that much. So you may as well just try and keep visualizing where you're flying towards. Reducing the power as necessary to maintain the right speed. You can try and land in a 3-point attitude if you want. 2-point attitude works just as well. Power will be at idle. And as you touch down, you can just pull back on the yoke, maintain that full back pressure. That'll help you come to a stop pretty quickly. And then you just taxi, as you've learned before, to wherever you want to go and shut it down. So that'll complete the tutorial on the Gotha G.V. Until next time, remember to fly safe and check your 6.